Hi everybody, this is Curtis Reacts. Today we're going to be reacting to Jim Carrey.
Huh?
I was thinking what's my favorite Jim Carrey movie. And I was going to say that, oh well, that's Liar Liar, because I loved Liar Liar, but I forgot about The Truman Show. Jim Carrey is as successful as you can get. He is a mega movie star. So if I, Curtis, said, can I talk to you about Jesus Christ? People, nah, no thanks, man. But if Jim Carrey wants to talk to you about Jesus, I want to know, why is he doing that? He didn't need to do that. He's Hollywood. He has no pressure on him externally that would push him toward, let's talk about Jesus. So what's Jim Carrey talking about Jesus Christ? And am I going to argue with him about it? Oh, if anybody's wondering about me, check out my other channel, Off the Left Eye. You can see I am a Swedenborgian Christian. Let's go.
The energy that surrounds Jesus is electric.
Energy that surrounds Jesus is electric. He's like, hey man, there's something to this. There's some energy here.
I don't know if Jesus is real. I don't know if he lived. I don't know what he means, but the paintings of Jesus are really my desire to convey Christ consciousness.
Christ consciousness, it's funny because with the Swedenborgian background that I have, it's like always a both and. So some Christians might be like, oh, Christ consciousness. What people usually mean when they say that is, well, Jesus Christ, the person, wasn't really like God in the world. He was just somebody who really got it and got enlightened. And so you can model yourself after his consciousness. Whereas Christians will say, no, Jesus Christ is God or the Son of God or whatever. The different Christians say different things. And so that's what's special about him. Actually, it's both.
¿Por qué no los dos?
Jesus is God, the human God. This is God born as a person among us. And also, who Jesus is what you encounter in anything that's good and any truth that you come across in your life, because he's the source of all the life. That would be why I think Jim Carrey is like, wow, something about this. I don't know if Jesus actually lived historically, but these paintings, it's electric. It's because you're representing in front of you God. God is a person. But Christ consciousness is also a real thing, because when Jesus was on the earth, he was living the life, opening the way that we live in. I'm the way, the truth, and life. He was opening the way that all of us can live in. And so the way that we now find our way to God is through, you could call it Christ consciousness for sure. It is through following the teachings and living the kind of life, a mini version of the kind of life Jesus had. So I'm there for it. Okay, I'm there for it.
I wanted you to have the feeling when you looked in his eyes that he was accepting of who you are. I wanted him to be able to stare at you and heal you from the painting.
I'm healed. That's the human. Swedenborg makes a maybe less photogenic statement about it. If you're just trying to say, oh, there's God, and you think of God something out there, you can't connect with that. But if you saw a picture of Jesus, arms out over the water, like for a hug, that's a God you can connect with. So if you look at this and says, oh, not just the idea of omnipotence or omniscience or all-powerfulness or timelessness, but, oh, this is somebody who's looking at me and gets who I am, and I can love them, he can love me. That's the power. That's the electricity of Jesus. Let's go.
You can find every race in the face of Jesus. And I think that's how every race imagines Jesus. They imagine him as their own.
Back before it was cool to be like, hey man, we're all human beings regardless of our physical characteristics like race. Swedenborg, which we just did a show about on my other channel, was saying every community in heaven sees Jesus differently because everybody's eyes essentially are attuned to a different part of the wavelength of who God is. We see God differently because of who we are. So it's not just like, all right, yeah, let's make it so he's there for everybody. Really, Jesus appears differently to everyone because everyone is different. God is one thing. He's unchanging, but we all bring our own thing to it, and that's great because you're going to see him in the way that you can most connect with.
I believe that suffering leads to salvation. And in fact, it's the only way. That we have to somehow accept, not deny, but feel our suffering and feel our losses, and then we make one of two decisions. We either decide to go through the gate of resentment, which leads to vengeance, which leads to self-harm, which leads to harm to others, or we go through the gate of forgiveness, which leads to grace. You've made the decision to walk through the gate of forgiveness to grace, just as Christ did on the cross.
I have a theory. My pet theory is that given the space to weigh things and think of them independently and really seek with your heart, the ideas that Swedenborg also was shown will just emerge. Because there's an underlying truth that Swedenborg got to see in his experiences and Jim Carrey is seeing here. because what he's saying is you can't grow without suffering. Go back a couple hundred years, Swedenborg wrote that there's a thing called spiritual crises, which are just what he was saying, where you get broken down to the point of despair and there's some suffering in it. We cannot progress spiritually without those. And Jesus' suffering on the cross was his final spiritual crisis, in which the most confronting of hell and the most good could be done. Jim Carrey is saying that what comes out of that is you get to choose in that pit of despair, which, by the way, Swedenborg says, temptations continue to the point of despair. From there, you get lifted up and out of it. When you come out the other side, you've made a moral change. Even in that, I'm latching on to what's good and true. I'm letting the truth, which is that love should lead the way, move me. And that's what I live by now, even more so. Telling you, man, all roads lead to Rome, which in this case, Rome is the truth.
It really has. I've always wondered about certain things.
Look at that. Ace Ventura and Jesus down there. That's good. Okay.
Certain ideas surrounding Jesus. One of which was like a puzzlement to me since I was a little kid, and that was when they say Jesus freed the world from sin. I thought, what does that mean? He freed the world from sin. And I never really got it. I thought, have you freed the world from sin? I'm still sinning. I mean, I can sin some more. I can sin all I want. I can do anything I want. Boobies.
Man, he's hammering a little bit on faith alone. Swedenborg said the thing that kills Christianity, and effectively had killed it, was this idea of faith alone. Like, yeah, Jesus freed me from sin, but then I'm still doing all this stuff, but I'm freed from sin. I guess it doesn't matter if it destroys the core of human spirituality, in which you could say of Christianity as well, which is to repent, meaning to make a distinction between what's good and what's harmful, and try your best to do what's good and not do what's harmful. Also, what I like about what he's doing here, which again matches up exactly with Swedenborg, because I just did a short video on my other channel about how you have what is called historical faith. This is when you are taught something, usually when you're younger, when people are just telling you this is what you have to believe. That's fine, it can be a starting point, but it's not actually faith, or it's not actually really something. Because you have to get to a point where you're doing exactly what he says, which is, you gotta think about it. Does that really make sense? Is that really right? Because the only time something living can be born in you that actually lets God then lead you through it is when you've come to it without external pressure. Your rationality and your conscience agree this is good and true. So he's doing that. Let's see where he goes with it.
So what happened eventually was I was in a moment of despair, no doubt, questioning everything. I do that from time to time. And one day it occurred to me that the adversaries in my head were the only thing keeping me from peace. And I started to let them go one by one. I consciously, as they entered my head, went, is this real? Do I even know this person? Sometimes you don't. You don't know your adversaries. You've never met them. You create these wars.
Holy moly.
Holy moly.
So, adversaries in the head. One of the things that can most wig people out about Swedenborg is that Swedenborg talks about an influence in the mind of the spiritual world, of the afterlife. And he says there's an influence from heaven, which is everyone in the afterlife who is overall devoted to love, and hell, which is everyone in the afterlife who is overall devoted to selfishness or exploitation or something. So you experience this in your thoughts and in your feelings. Heaven and hell are influencing your mind. And to some people that's like, oh, that's weird and creepy. To me, having struggled a lot with anxiety and depression and negative racing thoughts, what he's saying actually just makes sense of my inner world. Jim Carrey here, multimillionaire, wins some awards type guy. He's describing that it's just an unavoidable fact of life. He's using personification here, but it's not far off. He's saying, I've got these enemies in my head. Do I even know that person? Because the experience is, who is this? What are you doing in my head? And the process he describes, where he says, is this even real? Do I need this? I'm going to get it out. That is to me, seems like a version of Swedenborg in Heaven and Hell saying, if we believed, as is truly the case, that all good is from heaven and all evil is from hell, when something came from hell to us, we would just dismiss it. He calls that perception. When you can know, wait a second, this thing in my head, this is just from hell. And that he's not saying that, but he's saying the rudiments of it. He's saying the beginnings of it, which is, who is this person in my head? You don't need to be here. I'm getting you out of there. And he's connecting it somehow to Jesus Christ. So just saying, man. Just saying. I love it. I love seeing that. I think he's obviously eloquent and has thought deeply about this sort of thing. I just like seeing the emergence there of there's some Christianity in him there. I don't know what his religious beliefs are, or what his like spiritual practice is, but it's unforced. It's an honest exploration of things, and I feel like he's coming to some of the same conclusions that Swedenborg did. And yeah, man, don't let those enemies in your head get you down. That's like the power of Jesus Christ, is he can get in there and help you out with that. So cool, man. Thanks. React.